yeah. And so those are the sort of things. And the most common, of course, is a person that's receiving monetary support, that if they resolve it, they'd lose that.
Like a disability, or they won't leave their husband because they're getting support, financial
Yeah, well,
support.
something, you know, of that nature, yeah.
Or any kind of secondary gain. Could it be emotional? They're getting something emotionally, or they're going to lose?
Well, some of the resistant benefits is revenge. Some of it is
Clearly.
Financial or emotional security. You do have some people that believe that they deserve that punishment.
Oh, tell us more about that. That's interesting. So,
Well, it's simply that whatever it is, whatever the problem is, they've done something that is my fault, so I should be punished about it.
and can you go back and work with whatever it is that they're blaming themselves
Yeah,
for?
sure. It's up to them. That change is up to them.
So you can take them back there. It's up to them if they want to change
Right.
it or
It's up
not.
to them to build a bridge or whatever to make it a positive.
So if they can't seem to find their way around making it a positive, it doesn't get better?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And just like that spur, if you don't remove the emotional cause, it's going to come back. And when one major system is offended, at least two more are restricted.
So what do you mean by that?
Well,
so it causes more problems.
Yeah, causes other restrictions in other systems of your body. So I do what I call a body scan, that once the major cause is resolved, then I have them start from the top of their head and go down through their body and have their mind identify any and all body systems that are not functioning in their normal or natural manner. And sometimes you get 3 or 4. And so after they identify them, then I go at the top and go back through them, and this time have them fix it.
Yeah, so you're clearing everything.
Yeah, clear everything out.
And how many sessions does this typically take?
1.
Oh.
And the time in hypnotism on the average is 15 minutes.
Maybe not only the world's oldest, but fastest hypnotist.
Well, I've been promoting that any emotional or physical deficiency of the human body can be fully evaluated as to its origin, cause, and solution in one session of less than an hour. And all of my books will give you evidence of that statement.
And I know you also have evidence because of the research study. So I know there was documents, medical documents before and after to prove that these people had healed.
Well, the award that I got from the National Guild today, that was 26 years ago. And today that condition is still listed as untreatable, incurable.
Which one was that?
Myasthenia gravis is a nerve problem. And he had an eyelid that drooped down, and he couldn't raise it without manual.
Physically, yeah.
And so I just happened to run across him moving through the guild, through the hotel, and when I spoke to him, he went and lifted his lid, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he says, "Well," he told me the name, and he says, "The doctors tell me all the nerves up here are dead, and eventually these will go and my whole face will, and there's no treatment or no cure." And so I said, "Well, come into my workshop today and I'll take care of it." And so he came in, and in exactly 14 minutes it was resolved.
And did his eye pop open?
Yep, and it's been that way for 26 years since.
Wonderful.
Well, that's why they give me the...
That's why they gave you the award.
Yeah. But that is a long story connected to it. The man with the back surgery referred a priest from Arizona who had a stiff neck from birth, and he had to turn his whole body to see. And he came over to see if I could help him. And under hypnosis, we found that when he was born, the doctor used forceps to turn his head so he'd have an easier delivery, and the emotion of that froze that for over 50 years.
Ah, and when you discovered the cause, did his neck?
As soon as he discovered the reason for it, it turned to normal. And when it turned to normal, he says, "I think Archangel Michael is with me." I said, "Great, I'm going back to the National Guild and I could use some help." Michael says, "Don't worry, I'll be there." And everything I did at that conference was
spot on.
Yeah, right on.
And you had a little help from the other
Yes,
side.
I had another spirit, spirit help.
That's your spirit assisted healing.
Yeah, right.
Ah. So what about past life problems? Like sometimes I wonder, why would a child be born and early on get cancer, like 2-year-old or 5-year-old?
Well, I don't know, other than the fact that all of us come in with a reason. And when I ask that reason, the answer is always 4 words or less.
Okay.
And so if it's a reason that has to be worked out, like my sight, I believe that I will be recovering my sight during the fall of the year, and time will tell.
Oh, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Al's blind currently, so, and still working as a hypnotist, even though he's blind.
Well, that way I have an excuse for feeling around.
So, tell me though, do you do past life regression as well?
Do what?
Past life regression?
Of course, that's sort
Tell
of,
us about that. That's another interesting topic.
Well, one of my questions is, when I finish resolving the physical or emotional problem, I ask for their spiritual level. They'll be given a number.
Okay.
And that number represents their spiritual level. And there is an average worldwide, I guess. And so I get a number that anybody that tells me that they don't believe in reincarnation is always 3 or below.
Ah.
There's an average, and I'm not going to tell you that right now, but there's an average. And people who are in the process of helping others tend to be a few levels above average.
Okay. And what's the highest number it goes
I
to?
wished I knew.
Oh, so it's not like 0 to 100.
When I ask my subjects what's the highest, and they always tell me, "I don't know, but there's at least 2 levels above me."
Okay, too
And,
bad
and
left above you.
so the pattern is that at whatever level you are within 2 levels. And once you reach the top of that, then you're passed on to some new teachers who are at least 2 levels above you. And they bring you up to their level and so forth.
And you keep moving up the
Until
rung.
you keep moving up. And I don't know what, other than the fact that Rebecca, in my first experience, was told that she was at the highest.
But you don't know what that number
No,
is?
uh-uh.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so we have a lot of UFO enthusiasts, as you know, in North America and around the world.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about Rendelsham, the Bentwater's case.
Well,
And John Burroughs.
the UFOs have been around for ages, hundreds of years that there are reports about people seeing these things. And so I was selected to hypnotize a witness to that incident, which has become more known than the Roswell incident. And I was hired to have him relive his experience. Well, in his experience, him and a sergeant had observed it in the forest outside of the base, military base there, and wasn't going to say anything about it. And that night, why, he was awakened from his sleep, that they're back. So he got up and went running out there, and the colonel and half, you know, some of the city officials was all there.
Oh, and the UFO was back.
Yeah, and it was there. Well, in his experience, he said the colonel told him to ask him to see how close he could get to the object. And he says, I got about 10 feet from it, got knocked back 30 feet.
Right.
So anyhow, I took him through his experience. And then, for some reason, why I said, well, I'm going to take you back to that object and I want to see if there's some occupants in it. See if you could communicate with them. So we got back, and I put him next to the object. Why, suddenly 2 red streaks that come out of his collar and up over his ears, blood red. And it concerned his wife and me, so I moved him back from the craft, and instantly they disappeared. And he didn't even know what happened. So 8 years previously, I worked with a young lady who had been abducted at the age of 8, and an implant put in her nose and one in her back. And she was a military person, and apparently they couldn't do anything about her emotional conflict, so she came to our research project. And in the research project, I found that she was a medium between an alien entity, personality, and present day. And the identity of the alien personality was Denotica. And Denotica was using rosemary as a medium to communicate. And I worked with her for a while, different days, and talked to Denotica, and one day the communication was like static, and so I stopped the session. And when I woke the girl up, she says, all the time you were talking to me, it felt like my body was bloating, getting bigger and bigger. And I said, well, how do you feel now? She says, fine. So a week later, I worked with her again and got in touch with Denotica, and I asked her what happened. She says the frequencies were not right, and if you'd have continued, there would have been an explosion.
Oh. Oh my goodness.
And so Denotica introduced me to her planet leader, named Modar.
And what planet system were they from?
89 light years from Earth, the planet Valenta. Well, if you stop and think about how a light year is about 230 million miles, how 89 light years would be. And so she says she was coming from the 4th system from Earth. Now, whether she meant 4th, what do you call it?
Galaxy.
Galaxy. But anyhow, why, that's where she was coming from.
And does this have any relation to the Bentwaters case?
Well, yeah.
You started off with that.
Well, anyhow, when I asked him to talk, see if there's any intelligence behind, he says there's red lights all around the craft, and there's an intelligence behind that red light. And I said, well, talk to it. Who are they? Where they come from? He said, oh, we come from a planet 89 light years from Earth. Mm. Oh, you don't happen to know Modar and Denotica? Yeah, we know them. Oh, what would you say if I told you I had talked to both of them? No, you didn't. That's impossible. And I said, well, you want to talk about it? No, we're not interested in you. Well, you're talking to this other John Burroughs. Well, we can control his mind. And we travel at the speed of light. We stop at a base on Mars before coming to your Earth. And I said, well, how long does it take you to get from Mars to Earth? And the answer was immediately 1 hour. And so a week later, the person that invited me to do that had called and said he had his staff calculate that, and he missed it by 14 minutes.
Oh.
We are here, we've been here, we're in your ground, we're in your water, we're in your sky. We are here to observe you because we believe we were once your form.
Oh, the extraterrestrials believed they were once in human form.
Yeah.
So what form were they in now? Did John Burroughs happen to be able to take a look?
Well, I had her describe, Hypnotic could describe herself to me. And it's a common big head, long arms, silvery skin, no bridge for the nose, small mouth. So I said to her, are you considered beautiful where you are? And her answer was, everything is beautiful that doesn't hurt. And so I presume that at least that particular planet was a peaceful.
So what do they think of us then?
Huh?
I said, if she considers everything beautiful that doesn't hurt, what does she think?
Well,
Or what do they think of us here?
I had another incident where what do you call it, a mothership alien landed, and the aliens were standing by the door admiring our strength and beauty.
Okay.
And immediately there was an emergency that they had to leave a bunch of them here while the mothership left, and they were put into hibernation and buried in our mountains.
They're still alive, just hibernating.
Well, they're hibernating, but anyhow, I had one that was got tired of waiting and died, and was born to a Indian tribe in the Northwest Territory of the United States.
And sorry, who did you get this information through? Donatica?
No, from a subject that.
Oh, another subject.
Another subject.
Ah.
And when I woke her up, she says, "Well, that explains it." And I says, "Explains what?" She says, "I can." When she was born of this Indian tribe, at a very young age, they found that she could communicate with the animals, and they put her in charge of all their animals. Mm-hmm. And so when I woke her up, she says, "That explains it." And I says, "Explains what?" She says, "I can walk down any street in this town, and every stray animal will be following me."
And that's because she was previously from that
Yeah,
different planet.
previously able to communicate with them.
In your story, you also mentioned there was some on the side of the craft in Rendlesham, Bentwater.
Yeah, one of the witnesses that I didn't work with, but one of the witnesses that was with John Burroughs, his sergeant, made a copy of what figures he saw around the edge of the craft. And of course, he's not able to interpret what they mean.
Has anybody interpreted since?
Well, I tried to get him acquainted with Rosemary, the young lady that became Hypnotica, and see if she could.
Well, if it's from her planet, it would make sense.
Well, no, the girl I worked with, named Rosemary, lives in New York. And she was 23 years old at the time, and now she's 61.
Did they ever make contact? Or?
No, as far as I know, yeah. Yeah. But you see, John Burroughs has been 30-some years, and as he goes to these UFO meetings and talks about his experience, he never mentions at all what I found out.
And why not?
Because it's not a part of what I was hired to do, and not a part of their belief system.
Ah, so he doesn't, you mean the part where you talked,
Yeah,
talked to the
yeah,
occupants.
yeah.
What does he talk about?
talks about his experience of, of being there and so forth, and being knocked back and being frightened by some of the stuff. And
it was just too much for him to accept as a...
Yeah, right. He says, I'm still coping with that experience.
Oh, you mean, inside he's coping with it.
Mm-hmm.
He struggles with it a bit.
And his wife was present, and she couldn't put up with what he had experienced. They had a divorce.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Because of that, yeah.
Have you ever regressed anybody else who's been abducted or had?
Yeah. I had one lady back in the 80s that was checking herself in and out of hospitals from stress, and they couldn't find nothing wrong. And so she was referred to me. And under hypnosis, we found that she had a alien spirit who told me that they were preparing her for a future event. And I said, well, you're giving her too much energy, back off a little bit. And so they did, and she stopped having her problems and so forth.
What were they preparing her for?
Huh?
What future event were they, like
well, that
a global event or
that
personal?
I don't know.
Oh.
And I have kicked myself a dozen times for getting into these things and not asking enough questions.
Yeah, because we're all curious now. Because I wonder if it was global or personal.
I would imagine that it would be global.
Oh, have you ever received information about our future through any of your hypnotic subjects?
Yeah, I was told in '65 that this country is going to fall to a power that in 1965 was non-existent or a small power, and the reason it will fall is because of a breakdown of our moral and religious standards.
And do you know which power that is?
No. You have to take a look. You know, there's two or three that's...
China.
You know, China and North Korea and so. I was told also that I would see human cloning in my lifetime.
When were you told this?
Huh?
When were you told this?
Back in '65, yeah.
Ah, so...
And I've had one experience where in regression the person became a entity from the year 2330.
So they went forward in time.
Yeah, you can move forward, and that she was a clone. So I don't know whether that was the one I was supposed to see or whether I see a reality.
Okay, so have you ever future progressed people other than...
Do what?
Future progressed. Like moved people into the future.
Not on purpose, no.
But when you did it accidentally,
yeah.
What?
Well, she become another personality, and I asked a couple of questions, and she says, "I'm not programmed for that."
I'm not programmed.
Yeah. And so I said, "Well, how are you programmed?" She says, "By machines."
Really?
So anyhow, while doing our conversation, my subject elbow got to going like this. And I says, "What's going on?" She says, "My friend here wants me to stop talking to you and pay more attention to him."
So when you've accidentally moved people into the future, what else have they told you is in our future?
Dome cities in the sky with a self-sufficient population of 30,000. Space scooters moving between these cities.
So how are they're just floating there? Like,
huh?
Are the domes just floating?
Yeah, just like a satellite.
And how far up?
Well, outside of the Earth's gravitation.
Ah.
And outside of any gravitation.
What does that mean for planet Earth, though, if we're all living in
the
sky?
Well, it suggests to me that if we keep up doing what we're doing, the Earth will be like Mars.
Do you have any idea of what year that was in?
No. This one I got was 2330. Do you remember Buck Rogers, 25th century?
Yes, yes.
Where do you think he got all his information?
Oh, so you think maybe that was...
No, I don't know,
Yeah.
but anyhow, it's compatible to that, information.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
the science fiction writers, I do believe sometimes channel their
Yeah,
information.
yeah. Well, I mean that's very compatible. Whereas 25th century, why 2330 is not that far away, couple hundred years.
So if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice that you've picked up that would help benefit them.
Well, at this conference that we're at, I'm going to hand out a scroll on parchment papers of the Ten Commandments.
Yep, they're pretty straightforward, aren't they?
And so suggest that obey,
Yeah.
because if you don't, you're going to create some of your own problems.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on In the Know Radio. It's been a
Well,
pleasure.
I hope that it was sufficient.
It was more than sufficient. Thank
You
you.
know,
Thank you.
but you never know what you're going to do or run into until you're into it.
Speaking from hypnosis.
Yeah. And my angel over here is doing better things than I've done. Yeah.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.